Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm really excited today. I have my buddy Eddie Speed. We have this little joke that where we see each other more online or at somebody else's event or in some far off land than we do right here in our hometown because we live in the same market. But we're going to be talking about buying on terms today. And Eddie is like the godfather of buying on terms and investing in notes and things like that. But for single family investors, he's sharing a lot of knowledge with us today about how to turn those deals that you're throwing away into kind of turn that trash into treasure by using creative finance. Professional real estate investors know that it's not really about the real estate. In fact, real estate is just a vehicle to freedom. A group of over 100 of the nation's leading real estate investors from across the country meet several times a year at the Investor Fuel Real Estate Mastermind to share ideas on how to strengthen each other's businesses, but also to come together as friends and build more fulfilling lives for all of those around us. On today's show, we're going to continue our conversation of fueling our businesses and fueling our lives. I'm glad you're here. Hey, Eddie, welcome to the show.
How you doing?
Good. So good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you.
In fact, I'm going to see you in a couple of days at Investor Fuel. So a little pre-meeting, I guess.
Yeah, that's it.
So you and I have been talking you've known each other for a long time. We've talked about this opportunity has existed forever, but where the market is right now with just a massive amount of this kind of shadow inventory and defaults that are piling up, and the fact that there's been a whole bunch of cheap interest rate mortgages out there, the stars are kind of aligning for active real estate investors that are generating a lot of leads and throwing them away right now if they're not using creative finance techniques, right?
That's it. Well, I mean, there's a shortage of listings at the moment.
Yeah.
NAR's listings are down over 30%. And so real estate investors are fighting in a market where there's every other person on the street has a business card that says they buy houses. And, that's a problem. And then, and your guys who you tend to attract the best guys, really, but your guys are still having to fight for price.
Yeah.
So the idea is just look at your garbage can, right? If you are buying a house and you're going to wholesale it, or for whatever reason, whatever your strategy is to buy it for cash at a discount, then of course keep doing that. But what happens with your rejected offers and your trash can gets more and more full?
Yep.
What do? So you and I, as you said, told the audience, you and I've known each other a long time. We've run in a circle of people that I would call, I'm a note guy, but you guys are ninja real estate investors. I mean, you played it at the highest level. And there's a good circle of people that you and I know in that space.
Yep.
And I'd sit around there and sit around the masterminds and stuff and listen. And I'd just sit there and think, the guy is telling me essentially that his conversions are not what they were for the obvious reasons that we just said.
Yep.
This was even before the virus, but the virus only made it worse.
Yeah. A seller's market usually makes it harder to buy for investors. Plenty of people are thriving right now, but it does make it more challenging in any market cycle where it's a seller's market.
Well, anytime you have people that figure out how to crack the code, they're thriving.
Yeah.
So what I had to do was go take the one thing that I had seen more than anybody else in the whole country and say, how can I help you apply that unique knowledge to your business? So heck, I've been buying seller finance notes since 1980, closed 50,000 deals. God knows how many I've looked at, hundreds of thousands. And so the one unique thing, Mike, that I brought to the table is I've seen about every seller finance crazy structure you can imagine, right? To the point where it sort of became puzzle pieces to me, just like some of the things that I watched that you figured out. Yeah, they're puzzle pieces that, to be perfectly honest with you, it's just foggy to me, but it's totally clear to you, right? And so in my little unique area, these became puzzle pieces. And so the idea was this. Let's be fair about it. You're sitting across the table. You're trying to buy a house from somebody. If they could just call the local realtor, they wouldn't be calling you. There's something about the deal that needs a house buyer in the deal and not the traditional brokerage list and sell. right? But the guy is listening to the realtor's price and trying to get the real estate investor to play at that game. Well, that's not going to work, right? Well, maybe it could. So the idea becomes, I can pay your price if you let me pay for your equity over time. Now, the art of the deal is, what the heck does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, there's components of what you would agree to within the loan documents, right? No personal guarantee, no corporate guarantee, right of refusal to buy your note at a future date. So they'll wake up one day, trust me, they will. They'll wake up one day and want to sell their seller finance note at a discount. Well, why aren't you the guy that gets to buy your own note?
Right.
Well, you got to write it in the agreement, or you're going to find out that I've realized I've made a lot of real estate investors mad. You know why? Because I bought 50,000 seller finance notes. I bought the note they wanted to buy because they were the payer.
Yeah. Well, most real estate investors, especially wholesalers and even rehabbers, we're generally looking for relatively fast money, right? We're not looking for long-term stuff initially. But I think most of the people that are more veteran, they're like, I'll give up short-term money for long-term money, because now we want the dream that we thought we were signing up for originally, which is not active today money as much as it is mailbox type money, right?
Yeah, wealth is everything. I mean,
yeah.
And here's the thing about it. When we see a real estate investor that comes to us and says, I need money today, right? We've got little phrases, money today, money tomorrow. So we've heard this a million times, right? Figuratively a million, but a lot, right? So understand, it's like, okay, I can show you how to do that if you learn how to structure the deal. In other words, if you say, I have got to make somewhere close to a wholesaler's margin today, yet I still would like to keep future income. People say, well, that's impossible. Not necessarily.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the opportunity that's kind of coming up. I think, guys like you and I, we've been talking for years about this market's due for a correction, because it has been due for a correction for years, but it seems to just keep plowing forward. But kind of behind the scenes, as you say, behind the curtain, there's some bad stuff happening, and it's literally just a matter of time before stuff starts to unravel. And I think anybody that's in the know here is shocked that it hasn't happened yet, right? So talk about kind of what's going on without scaring everybody. You guys better be sitting down, but no. But let's just talk about, because this creates an opportunity, right? So I'm not trying to say like curl up in a ball in the corner and start crying right now. It's like, prepare yourself for this opportunity as a real estate investor.
Well, and I think that's the point, right? The point is, first of all, if you've got any inventory you need to get rid of it. I had some stuff that was some old foreclosed properties and some stuff like just some old drippy kind of stuff. And let me just tell you something, we got rid of it because the bulls are out right now and the fools are out, so to speak, right? I mean, they're wanting to buy and everything's good. It's a good time to get rid of any problematic property in rentals or whatever that may be. Now, you may want to sell or finance them, but it's a time to get rid of them. Of any problems. Now, listen, I fully understand that what I say is going to sound crazy. Okay. And the only thing I can say to you is I spend an inordinate amount of time doing sort of state of the industry market conditions all the time, because I find myself particularly addressing higher volume real estate investors, telling them things that they're not looking at. Now, let me tell you something. It is not ingenious work. If you watch Housing Wire, DS News, Mortgage Report, you can get online. These are all reports that come out. Mike, you know this. They come out on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Right. The U.S. Census Bureau has some pretty amazing information. So all of these things that we do, I don't have to be the ultimate scientist to go figure it out. I just have to pay attention to what people are giving us on a basis. The mortgage industry right now and the real estate industry are on the two of the widest, they're the widest apart I've ever seen in my 40 years in the business. The real estate industry says, "Oh my God, look at this! The houses, the increase in property values is the best it's been in 15 years." That was a headline the last week.
Right.
Okay. The mortgage industry, on the other hand, has dropped the people that can qualify by a mortgage by over a third. Right. So the mortgage industry says, we ain't going for this. Right. We understand there's a shortage of listings. We understand they're fighting in the front yard to buy a house. But Mike, here's a fact. Okay. 17 million households did not make a mortgage payment or a rent payment in January.
Wow.
So that's a problem.
And that's let's say is that the total default rate, or is that because there's probably some new ones in there, and then you got some old ones that haven't paid for a while, and so
yeah. So what I've kind of seen is this, and you're a marketing expert, okay? But I can tell you that the data of the hobbyist landlord is that guy's bleeding bad.
yeah.
That guy's really bleeding, and there's 17 million of them. 17 million houses owned by a guy that owns 5 houses or less.
Wow.
3/4 of them self-manage.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so
they're the type, my property management company, they have a workout process. They say, well, we could, here's how to get some government benefits, which I'm totally opposed to, but when it's my money, like if I can get it, I'm going to get it. Right. But the individual landlord is just having late night phone calls with tenants and feeling bad for them or can't do anything. Yeah.
He didn't have a system. He didn't have a system when he started. He didn't have a vetting process, and he sure doesn't have one now. So to me, and you and I've had this conversation more than once, if I were looking for the one customer to go chase, it would be a landlord to buy on terms.
Right.
You're saying, well, heck, Daddy, that doesn't make any sense. He's going to ask me I'm going to owner finance, and I'm going to be committed to make payments to him. And I don't know when I'm going to start getting payments. Well, wait a minute. Why don't you just write it in the agreement that you don't owe a payment unless you're getting a payment?
It's kind of funny because, most of my career has been pretty straightforward, kind of fundamental real estate investing. But I'm a finance guy. My wife used to work on Wall Street as an investment banker. Like, we're fairly savvy in that regard, but it's just not what we were taught and not what we learned up front. And we just stuck to our guns. But if there was ever a time to be in the creative finance space and monetize those deals you're throwing away, now is the time. And like you said, whatever you can imagine, you can do if somebody agrees with it. Whatever terms you can come up with, you don't want to get too crazy, but like you said, well, what if the terms are, and I have a few friends that are doing this now, you owner finance it to me and I'm going to pay you. Now, in the event that it's vacant, I'm going to take all this burden on of trying to make sure it's full because we're both going to be bleeding, but I don't pay you unless I get paid.
Yeah. Most people that listen to this, they're like, yeah, well, I listened to this guy say this, but the truth of the matter is I've made offers where they were going to owner finance all their equity and they wouldn't agree to it. Right. Well, 2 things I would say. Way less than 50% of the time do I get them to owner finance all of their equity.
Right.
Right. It's more likely, Mike, that we do a tweener. I get a private first, or even a bank first, although I don't get borrow money from the bank, but you get a private first and the seller carries a second.
Yeah.
And then you depending on how much money you give him, you can defer when you even start paying him. Forget the interest. You don't even make payments for 3 or 4 years, depending on how much money you give him up front. Right. So all of a sudden, then you can accelerate paying down the first. You see what I'm saying? And you start, kind of blending it together. And people say, well, all this stuff gives me a headache. I know sometimes doing stuff that gets you rich makes you think.
You mean getting rich isn't easy? You gotta, the thing is you gotta sharpen your pencil a little bit and find ways to get creative now. So we have some notes that we've owner financed some rentals, and we've had some sellers owner finance to us. I wish I had used that strategy way more. I was just talking to my wife, Lindsay, after lunch here, and she said we have 3 payments left on a deal that it was a little bit of a messy one because the woman owner financed it to us, and then she died, and then there was a bunch of problems with her her heirs and stuff like that, which we had to dredge through. But it was an amazing deal. Like, we bought a house with no money out of pocket, and we funded the rehab. She owned it free and clear, and she said she didn't need the money right away, and she appreciated that she was going to get a return on that over 10 years. Unfortunately, she didn't live for 10 years, but it was a great deal for us, and she believed it was a great deal for her. So there's lots of opportunities out there. One thing that surprised me when we talked here, it was actually at our Christmas party, about, I don't remember if you shared a number, but just how many of those landlords own their houses free and clear.
Yeah. So,
And for them, if they're looking at it, because what they really wanted was mailbox money, but that's not what they got when they bought a rental. They got a nightmare. But what they really could get is mailbox money if you structure this right.
they have enough equity carry financing. That's what I've always said. Like, this is a different customer than the 2008 customer that was over leveraged. So yeah, Urban Institute, who they are, and we scrape a fair amount of data from them, and they're the ones that went through the whole waterfall. So there's call it 17 million houses. 17 million houses. They own 1 to 5 houses. And they own it their individual name. So they're not sophisticated enough to own it in an LLC or a corp or anything like that. They're not Mike Hambright, okay? And 3/4 of them self-manage. 60% of them paid cash. It's a crazy number.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have bet that in a million years. In fact, you and I have some mutual friends that have excessive experience in the turnkey space. And they said, send me that data. And I sent them this data over. They're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't believe that's true. And I'm like, I know, it's just data.
Financing is so cheap. Why would they pay cash, But I'll be honest, I'm the same way. I have a ton of equity in my rentals. I know I could refinance them for cheaper, but I just, this is going to sound crazy, but then I've got the burden of keeping that money busy. And I just, it's just where I'm at in my business. That's one more thing on my plate that I don't really want to deal with right now. But Or there's a lot of people that inherit a house they grew up in, or, and it's free and clear, and they didn't refinance it. They just said, well, I don't really want to sell it. Let's just rent it out,
The other thing is, Mike, don't feel like terms deals have to be all free and clear. I mean, there is some percentage of deals that we carve up for students,
of course,
for free and clear, but way more than 50% have some debt. Yes, you can do a sub 2, but then there's other ways to structure it where you even pay off the existing mortgage and you don't have to do it sub 2. Sub 2 can work, but I will tell you that I'm real structured in sub 2 deals that I help students do. The stars have to align correctly.
Yeah. So let's talk about who buy, because a lot of people think, well, rates are really low. Why would somebody buy on terms and probably pay, I know your rates differ all over the board. Most of my owner finance terms are 9.99%, right under the 10% threshold. I have a lot of kind of C grade properties, or they're, a little bit lower end properties that we owner finance. I know that's not your model per se, but who buys on terms and who needs to pay a higher rate and can't get qualified for a traditional loan?
The idea is I have found that I can buy a far more superior property than the typical seller financer. And the reason I do is one simple reason. My blended interest that I pay when I'm buying is below market conditions. Okay, so I can control the property with inordinately good financing. Your buddies in the apartment and the storage facility business would call that your capital stack, right? So I've used a kind of a Wall Street concept to pursue this. So I buy under a good financing terms. And so when I sell, I'm selling a little better house that the customer's not going to pay 9.9% interest, typically, right? Yeah. But let me just tell you something. A non-QM loan rate today is about 7%. Non-qualified mortgage loan. Now, by the way, they almost became non-existent in the beginning of the pandemic, and they've come back a little bit, but not excessively. 1/3 of all loan originations for the last many years has been a non-QM loan. So not everybody qualifies for Fannie and Freddie.
Yeah, that's interesting. 1/3. I wouldn't have guessed that.
So here's what's happened. The mortgage industry come in and they call it the mortgage credit availability. It's a mortgage banker thing. You can Google it. And so, but you can look at this graph and it just goes, shh, and it's the percentage of people that they now will underwrite for a conventional mortgage. So what everybody goes, well, that can't be true. The mortgage industry was crazy last year. Hell yeah, they refinanced a bunch of perfect people. 70% of the loans they were making were refis.
Wow.
And so the loan production business, if you were just looking at new purchases, it was not what people thought it was.
Yeah.
And so the mortgage credit availability meant that they were financing perfect people. Now, I don't know about you, but I've got good credit. I know you have good credit, but I own 8 different companies.
Yeah.
I'm going to refi my personal home and I've got good credit and I owe about 35% of what my house is worth. No kidding. I'm going to do a Fannie Mae refi. They're like, we can't do this.
Right.
You're like, what? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
So understand that like they don't like self-employed.
Right.
And they don't like multiple company owners self-employed. Now, I don't know. I'm sure there was something quirky about our stuff, but I've talked to other people. I mean, listen, I wouldn't be a substantial credit risk if I own 35% of my house and I have an 800 credit score, right?
Yep.
But that ain't.
But they'll lend to somebody all day long, not to take anything away from anybody that's like a assistant manager at a local fast food restaurant that's had their job for a few months and, could lose it tomorrow, right?
But yes, but here's the truth. The average credit score for a conventional mortgage today is, like 780.
Wow.
And the average down payment for a conventional mortgage is 19% down.
Wow. Okay.
See, people, that's what you can like Ellie Mae is a good resource. I'm not telling you guys to go do all this research if you want me to go do it, because I'm still going to go do it. But these are like national sources that tell you what the real stats are. And it's not generally what people think that it is. So all that means, Mike, is this. I call the guy that needs seller financing a penalty box buyer. He's a good guy. He's just not bankable.
Mm-hmm.
And what's bankable today is excessively tougher than what was bankable a year ago. So what do I serve as if I'm going to seller finance somebody on the resale? I'm that outlet that provides financing for him to have home ownership so he doesn't have to be a tenant.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Wait a minute. If I can get 20% down, Mike, doesn't that give me upfront money?
Of course.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the cool thing is the money that's in the financing over time, it just adds up so fast. You all know, even with a cheap mortgage, if you were to truly finance your house and pay it off, even at 5% over 30 years, you're paying probably 2.5, 3 times what you really paid for the house just because of all the interest. So what that adds is a lot of meat on the bones for us as real estate investors to be able to play with the deal, right?
I came up because I started a long time ago, right? In 1980. I came up in the business under a little different culture. And so there's sort of a culture today of a little bit of, microwave. I want it now. I want it all now, that kind of thing and stuff. And I come up in the business where my father-in-law said, if your net worth is not growing faster than your income, you're going in the wrong direction. And that all sounds kind of silly and old school and old fashioned until you wake up and realize that you could do a deal that could pay you for 20 or 30 years in the future. And you just do that 10 times a year. And now you got something.
Yeah, no doubt. And the truth is there's a lot of real estate investors, probably a lot of you listening to this right now, that have deals you could use creative financing techniques with, build your net worth, build your cash flow. And right now you're saying, they wouldn't take our offer, close the lead, right? We're throwing it away. And this helps offset your marketing costs because right now you're not monetizing as many as you could if you get a little creative.
There's a smart young man that's in your mastermind, and we were visiting outside. Nice young man, and we were visiting outside at one of your meetings, and I was there, and he goes, Eddie, I've listened to you, and I've tried some of that, but he said they just won't take my offers. And I kind of had a long pause, and I looked at him. I said, "You think you're saying it the right way?"
Yeah.
And
Well, we do have a lot of preconceived notions, right? You know, what's interesting to me is even a lot of people that are in my mastermind or in my circle, people that I know that have only been in the business for 2 or 3 years, maybe, and they're crushing it, buying 50, 100 houses a year. And then you've got some old dogs that we know that have been doing this for a couple decades, and they just stopped. They're like, this just doesn't work anymore. And you're like, well, does it not work anymore, or are you not innovating and trying to find a way? Are you getting in your head, right? Because a lot of new people have come up and they're crushing it, and they don't have all these preconceived notions. One time I was that guy. In 2008, everybody had some skeletons in the closet, bad habits, preconceived notions, and we came in and didn't know anything, and we cleaned up, and I think there's a lot to be said there about how you can keep your head clear of these preconceived notions of that doesn't work anymore and say, well, it does work. Just how do you pivot a little?
listen, I'm a specialist. I don't know a 50th about buying houses, seriously, right? I understand lots of concepts, but you understand some excessively deep things, right? So I've always been the creative finance guy that helped the real estate investor. That's kind of been the role that I've taken on since at least 1990. And that's what this is what I understand. And I've started realizing that, when we go through processes and show people case studies and show them this way, and you can structure it this way, and you could do this and you can do that. And then inevitably they leave there, and you've been to a class and you've seen that whole thing unfold. They're like, gosh, there just were things there that were right in front of my face. I just didn't see it.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I've spent 40 years studying this stuff. Of course I'm supposed to find stuff that other people wouldn't find.
Yeah.
It's just what you do in your space.
Absolutely. So, guys, I want to tell you in just a moment, we've got Eddie's doing some webinars, and he's got a book on buying on terms that's free. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Eddie, would you mind, just before we kind of close this down, you've been a member of Investor Fuel. You've known me for a long time. Would you mind just kind of giving a little testimonial of your experience as a part of the Investor Fuel family?
Mike, I've known you for years, but what I will tell you is this. You have a very loyal audience that all see you as an excessive go-giver. The things that the affection that your audience has for you, for what you do for them, and you just are a giving person. By the way, you give some of the coolest gifts I've ever seen, really, seriously. But I would just say if environment makes a difference, if you are in part of, if you're looking for an environment, and you're looking for an environment of people that have, from the leader down, that have a mentality of giving and sharing and not taking, that's what I've experienced.
That's great. I appreciate that, Eddie. By the way, we have our events next week, and we got a cool gift to give you out there. So you'll see.
Awesome. I can't wait.
It's fun. It's fun to do this stuff. We just think of like, what's something cool we can give out. So anyway, well, hey, Eddie, I appreciate you being here. So guys, Eddie has a book that's Buying on Terms, and the URL was kind of long, so we created a new one for you. And he's got some web classes coming up too, where he teaches this in more detail than what we're able to do here. Totally free. He's got a bunch of them coming up. You want to make sure you sign up for them though. And the link, I'm going to go ahead and give it out, Eddie. It's flipnerd.com/buying on terms, all one word. So flipnerd.com/buying on terms. Guys, go check that out. And Eddie, what will folks learn there in your web class?
Well, first of all, the book is about, I believe it's 6 chapters. So it gives you like it has an intro chapter, and then it gives you 5 different scenarios. So you start realizing you don't have to do this with just free and clear. They don't have to carry all the financing. You can take over an existing mortgage. There's all kind of other things that starts opening your mind up. So what I'd love for you to do, if you were the good student, is to go get the book. And seriously, it's 50 pages. Just sit down and focus on it and read it. It's worth it. It can make a lot of money if you do it, right? Yeah. And then you're going to get invited to a class, and at the class, then we're going to start just taking these concepts and start applying them to deals. And obviously, this is what Note School is. We're just trying to take you up so that a deal makes sense. And you've been there and hung out with us, and I'm grateful for you doing that. And And you know the deal. We like teaching with case studies.
Yep.
And they resonate with people. You can see it. It makes sense.
You can put a deal. We're all deal architects. It's just to put it together a different way than probably what a lot of you listening to this are used to doing, but you'll get it when you see it, right? So
That's it.
yeah, awesome. So that, again, that's flipnerd.com/buying on terms. Go check that out and you'll get access. So Eddie, appreciate you a bunch. Always good to see you, my friend. Excited to spend a few days with you here in just a couple more days. So
All right.
everybody, hope you got some value today. The opportunity has never been better for us as real estate investors to take advantage of this kind of perfect storm that's happening of massive default rates. We don't wish these things on anybody. The truth is for several years, I've been telling people that I'm building up and preparing for the next market cycle, and we're pretty close one way or another. The opportunity is here. Whether it's the virus or certainly that played a role, there's a lot of defaulting going on right now, and that's going to unwind one way or another. So you have a lot of opportunity to help people, serve people, and benefit in the process, which is amazing. So make sure you go check that out. Appreciate you guys joining us for the show today. We'll see you on the next one. Take care. Are you an active real estate investor? If so, and you want to latch on to the power of surrounding yourself with over 100 of the nation's leading real estate investors, all committed to building stronger businesses and living richer, fuller lives, you should jump on a call with us to learn more about Investor Fuel. Simply visit investorfuel.com to get started.